Hey y'all, welcome back to Poplar Creek Farm. Today on this lovely rainy day, I'm going to go ahead and start going over what I have learned from my garden this year. I think for every gardener, it doesn't matter how new of a gardener you are or how experienced you are. It is a really good idea to step back partway through your season and at the end of your gardening season and just kind of reflect on what you have learned, what your garden has taught you this year. You can have been gardening for 50 years and you should still be learning every year. There's always something to change and to learn from, especially in our ever-changing environment. As the climate does change and things, this year our summer was extremely hot and humid, which is not our typical New York summer. So I need to learn how to adapt to a different climate because my climate is changing. And I also need to step back and learn what I overplanted, what I underplanted, what did well and why, and what didn't do well and why. So I'm gonna go ahead and go over some of the main things I'm changing for next year. I could go over a million things I've learned this year because my garden was pretty much a fail of a garden this year, and I learned a lot from that. But I'm gonna go over the big things. So the couple biggest things are planning. So I need to plan a lot better. I need to plan my layout better. I need to plan what I need in my garden for food for us, what's sustainable, what do we eat. So that's pretty much what it comes down to is poor planning on my part. The biggest things are my layout of my garden. I'm totally changing that next year. So I kind of threw my garden together really quickly. I was a little overzealous and excited about things and wanted everything in my garden, and I wanted lots of everything. I kind of just ruined my garden because I wanted to put things in so fast, and I didn't really sit and plan it out super well. I'm not somebody who's really good about planning out things. I'm not somebody who's good with patience at all. So I need to learn that. So as of right now, this is kind of how my garden is set up. I drew out what's in my garden and how it's laid out. Now, it is not a to scale drawing in any way, shape, or form, but my rows all go this way. So here's my gate, you walk in, and my rows all go this way, except for when I got over here and things started to get a little funky. And my perennials that are in the beginning or in the front here are this way along the fence. There's no way, because this is a permanent gate, that I can expand my garden this way, so that's why I put perennials here. So next year, because we have minimal walking space in our garden, and the weeds have kind of taken over because of that, partly because of that, we are going to make a walkway. So we're going to walk in, and there's going to be a walkway right straight down the middle. That's going to be a mulched walkway. And my rows are going to go out from that to the side this coming year, partly because of airflow as well. I've noticed the way the wind blows, it's hitting right up against the plants that are rowed, like this. So the tomato plants on this side, we're getting airflow, but not on this side. So, and that's also just not pruning super well. So that's a huge thing. It's the layout of my garden. And I am going to expand my garden, which sounds crazy because I have a little over 2,000 square foot garden, and I've pretty much failed at it this year. So why expand? But I need to expand for better layout. One of the things I planted was honey nut squash and sweet potatoes, kind of close to each other, and they both vine, as do cucumbers and whatnot. But my honey nut squash especially is just taking over pretty much this whole half of my garden. That's taken over by honey nut squash. So I need to make room for things that vine. Well, hello, Hunter. And things that are going to take up a lot more space. So that's the big layout change, is planning for that. Now, one of the things that I want to do next year, different, is more tomatoes, but more tomatoes of ones that I'm actually going to use. So right here are some Italian heirlooms that, look at these things. They're huge. And these are paste tomatoes. My kids poked this one. You can see the kind of hole on it. But these are really good. And I've had a few that are cat faced, a little funky, but overall these have stayed really nice. They don't split super it's not huge splitting. I mean, I've got a little bit of splitting on the top, which is nothing compared to some of my other tomatoes. But those are really, really awesome tomatoes. I also have juice on me now. Some Amish paste, which here's the Amish paste. They're just bigger paste tomatoes, and they're really, really nice. Here's another Amish paste, a little bit more normal looking one. But this is actually a smaller one than most of the ones I've gotten out there. So those are really effective for sauce and salsa and preserving in general. Whereas these are my Paul Robeson that I planted for my slicer. I did plant some beefsteak. I had 2 plants, killed one, broke the stem completely, pretty much at the base, when I was dealing with my tomato cages, which is a whole nother thing I'm changing. But these Paul Robeson are pretty small overall. I mean, I've got some that are a little bit bigger. This is kind of in between here. It's more of the average size I'm getting off of the plant. I like this one. But a lot of them are these smaller ones, and as you can see, they're pretty much all split really, really badly. They've all split. You have to pick them when they have green shoulders, or they just split wide open, and then they rot before I can even do anything with them. So I'm still gonna plant some Paul Robeson because they are absolutely delicious, but they will be my sandwich tomato. These are gonna be more for tomato sandwiches, BLTs, things like that. Fresh eating, not preserving. I need like 4 of these to equal 1 of these for preserving. So I am definitely gonna try a bunch more slicers next year. I don't know which varieties yet. I've had a couple suggestions. I think I'm gonna try like an Abe Lincoln. I might try the, was it mortgage lifters? Some that are known to be really, really big. And I also think I'm gonna try some different color slicers, which I'm really excited about. I'm learning that I really like the different color varieties. I would have never thought that I would like yellow cherry tomatoes, and they're my absolute favorite now. And I mean, these Paul Robeson that are more of a dark purpley red are absolutely delicious. So I want to try some different colors, but most of my tomatoes are going to be ones that are going to be known for large production and also really good production. Not just, I don't want just a few large ones off of a plant. I want, a decent amount. Now, my Italian heirlooms are the ones that I've had a 1 pounder off of, which isn't huge, but it's decent size. And I've had multiple. I've had multiple that are right around that same size. So that to me is a good producing tomato. And I'm also gonna plant less cherry tomatoes. I absolutely love cherry tomatoes. My kids love them, they eat them. I barely get them inside. I actually have a few hidden in the bottom of this one. But I have so many of these that it's taking space that I could use for ones that I'm actually gonna be able to preserve. Now, the things that I'm going to plant more of next year and the things I'm gonna plant less of so let's start with the less of. I'm going to plant probably less Brussels sprouts. I have quite a few Brussels sprouts out there. I have a lot of Brussels sprouts out there, and they're really doing super well, but we don't eat a ton of Brussels sprouts. And so I think I do need to plant a few less of those, maybe more cabbages, because I can freeze cabbage and store it for the winter. I am going to plant, which my husband will be very, very happy to hear that I'm admitting this, but I am going to plant less zucchini. Probably even less yellow squash. We are overrun. I'm really the only one in this house that eats it. The kids will eat it on occasion. My husband will eat zucchini and zucchini bread, and he'll eat fried zucchini, breaded fried zucchini. But that's about it. I love it, but I can only eat so much zucchini before I'm kind of sick of it. And I planted about 6 plants of zucchini this year, and so I've just had so much of it. Definitely planting less zucchini. I still probably plant like 3 plants, 3 green zucchini and 3 yellow squash, and that would probably be more than enough for us. What else am I planting less of? I think that's the most of the less of, because most of the things I'm realizing I need more of are things that I actually planted few of. It's kind of a weird thing. So definitely more potatoes. I planted my potatoes from store-bought potatoes, which don't always produce great. They produce decent. I got a basket about this size full of potatoes. Oh, that's heavy. And that's a decent amount, but I want more for storage, for long-term storage, because that's something that'll sustain us through the winter. Definitely want more garlic. My garlic I didn't do anything right with. I didn't mulch it. I just kind of threw it in hard soil and left it. And I should have known that it wasn't going to bulb up and produce well. So I'll definitely plant a lot more of that. A lot more carrots. But I'm going to plant them in a smarter spot, not right next to honey nut squash that's going to vine everywhere. And I'm going to start my carrots a lot earlier. I started them late this year, and so they're growing more through the hot summer, so they're a little more bitter than sweet. And I'm also going to do succession with carrots, so I don't know if it's quite succession. I'm going to plant a bunch in the spring, and then I'm going to wait, and I'm going to plant a bunch more in the fall. So I have 2 kind of rounds of carrots, and a lot more of them. I am going to plant a lot more beans as well. I love beans. My family eats a lot of beans, especially drying beans. I planted a bush drying bean variety and a pole drying bean variety. And the bush ones are pretty much loaded. They're Uncle Willie's from Fruition Seeds. But this is 3 pods full. These ones were completely dry on the vine. They were crinkled up. But they're small beans anyways. They're a smaller variety. Now these I can also save for seed, but I want to be able to have a decent amount for next year for eating, or for over the winter for eating. So I'm going to plant a lot more next year, probably 3 to 4 times as many beans as I planted this year. And that's for all my beans, drying beans and the green wax beans, because they're things that we can and throw in meals all winter long. We want more slicer cucumbers because my slicers did terrible, and so we've had 1 slicer so far out of the garden, and that was it. I'm going to plant a lot more corn. The corn that we did harvest, first of all, didn't pollinate super well, so there was very spotty as to what it actually produced. So the more corn you have, the more likely you are to have pollination because of the wind. It's wind pollinated, so the larger square of it you have, the more you'll actually be able to get from each head or each ear of corn. And that's, again, something I can and be sustainable through the winter. So big things I'm planting a lot more of are tomatoes. I am going to plant more peppers. I'm probably going to plant less variety of peppers though. Just more of the ones that we're actually going to use in recipes. More potatoes. So more tomatoes, more peppers, more potatoes, more garlic, more carrots, lots more beans, and more corn. There's a few other things we'll plant more of. Like I said, more cucumbers, but it's mostly that was due to just not having good success with my cucumbers this year. I'm listening to my soil, and I am not planting a fall garden this year other than I have a 45-gallon grow bag that I was given, and so I'm going to plant a few things in there just to have a few crops for fall. But overall, I need to amend my soil before I can have a better garden. My garden is not doing well, and the majority of the reason is my poor soil. So we're going to get a couple loads of compost. I have our local waste authority has compost for $15 a truckload, and it looks beautiful. So I'm going to get a couple truckloads of that. We're going to till that in. We are also going to burn down the weeds before we till in anything. We're going to burn the weeds down because we have quite a bit of, most of our weeds have gone to seed, which is like the worst thing you want to do in a garden. So we're going to burn some of those, and we are going to add compost and then do a cover crop. Cover crops have 2 purposes. Well, I should say they have 3 purposes. So the main purpose for me is choking out weeds. So if you leave your soil completely bare, something's going to grow. Things are going to grow back. You can cover it with tarps, you can cover it with things, but that's not really adding anything to your soil. So if I do a cover crop that is going to choke out my weeds and add nitrogen, that's huge. That's important to me because a tarp is not adding anything. A tarp is just going to, yes, it'll choke out weeds and it'll kill weeds, but it's not adding nutrients. So clover, a lot of the legumes or greens and whatnot add nitrogen to your soil, and especially in areas that my plants have pulled a lot of nitrogen, you really want to have that replacement. And also clover especially has really deep roots and tills up your soil really well. So again, I have dense clay soil, so those roots of that clover that gets down in there and tills my soil naturally will be huge, huge for my garden next year. So I hope you guys take the opportunity to sit down, step back, write lists. Now I'm the worst for actually keeping records. I had all these plans to keep records and pretty much all those pages are totally blank. But I do recommend writing down what you've noticed, because it's easy in spring to forget all that you have learned from the previous year because you're excited again. I know next year if I don't write this down and commit to not planting as many zucchini plants, I will plant 6 zucchini plants again because I get so excited about planting. So I need to sit down and write what I have noticed in my garden, what I want to plant more of, what I want to plant less of, and what I did plant. Okay, I want to plant more beans. Well, how many bean plants did I plant last year? I don't remember. I need to count them, and I need to learn that, okay, I had 10 bean plants and that was not enough. So let's try, it was not even close to enough, so let's triple it. Or it was not enough, but it wasn't, I don't need that many more, well, let's just add a few extra. I need to write these things down, and I highly recommend that you guys do as well. Take the time to do it. It'll make a world of difference in your garden. And do this every year, because like I said, every year you will learn something. Next year I may notice that one area of my garden doesn't grow certain crops well. It's crazy. And so you need to do that every single year. Write down, what you're growing where, how much of everything you're growing, and how much of things you used. And that, it'll really help you in your gardening. So thank you all for joining me today. Please like and subscribe and join me on the next one.